UFC 282 in the lightweight division. A couple of guys looking to make moves and start grooves before they knew we were gone and make a move into the rankings. We have Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, whose dog might take a sloppy on your yard. You better watch out for it.
He'll be a gentleman about it, though.
He will. He'll tell you, and then it'll go viral. He's taking on Jared Flash Gordon, a guy who is incredibly well-rounded and on a tidy little run. He did face a bit of a blip, his second to last fight out against a forever prospect in Grant Dawson. But for Gordon, picked up the pieces, beat an all-time ledge in Leonardo Santos' last time out. And for Gordon versus some of the guys that Pimblett's faced so far in the UFC, if we break it down, Luigi Vendramini did catch him a little bit, but he ends up finishing him. The next guy out, Kazula Vargas, who caught him.
Does catch him.
But then Pimblett was able to get him out of there. And then Pimblett against Jordan Levitt. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot of resistance in that fight. Pimblett's now taking on another one of those well-rounded type of guys. Gordon can get it done in the striking. If you try and mess with him out on the streets, you're going to get taken down and finished. Wow. But Gordon has really kind of won out since he was facing guys like Charles Oliveira a few years ago.
That is the weird thing about Jared Gordon. He's in a very specific category of fighter to where he's a prospect's first really difficult fight, or is your last fight in the UFC on your way out. And that's pretty much his level of competition throughout his UFC, because there's been a lot of guys. Hakron Diaz is an example I always go back to, like a guy who was decent in his prime, but by the time he fought Jared Gordon, was well past it. So for Gordon, I do find it hard to get a real just adjustment on how good he is in the division, because he has had this late career resurgence, and it does seem like he's made improvements since the earlier blunders that we did see, because he's one of those well-rounded fighters, and well-rounded fighters always operate on a very fine line. You're either well-rounded to where you're going to struggle every time you fight a specialist. Like, you're good enough at wrestling, but if someone has great takedown defense and really good striking, they're always going to beat you. But I do think Gordon's cardio is able to carry him past and really be able to weaponize his well-roundedness. And I do think his cardio is going to be his biggest asset in this fight against Paddy Pimblett, because when I think about how Jared Gordon's probably going to fight this fight, it's pressure him forward, use the clinch, really wear on him and make it an ugly fight, because Gordon is a good offensive wrestler. We have seen him struggle in a few positions defensively with his grappling, but he's a big guy for the division too, even at lightweight. I know he was a former featherweight who then moved up, but he is a bigger guy and a real physical guy for this weight division too, and I think it's an interesting skill check for a guy like Paddy Pimblett. But it's weird, I don't think Paddy Pimblett's going to get the respect he probably deserves for beating Jared Gordon. Like, Paddy Pimblett's a pretty big name. He's the co-main event of a pay-per-view, so, like, people know who he is. And Gordon, is a really difficult test for a lot of fighters because he is so well-rounded. He can take a big shot. He can weaponize his cardio. So, for Pimblett, even if he does get the win, I don't feel like this will be the stock-boosting thing that the UFC might think it is.
If you look at it for Pimblett, he holds an advantage here, and it's not a technique advantage. It's not some type of skill that he possesses. It's the fact that he has the advantage of hindsight. And that's because his main teammate and a guy that he cornered in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, Chris Fishgold, the former Cage Warriors featherweight champ, actually has a loss to Jared Gordon. So next generation, Liverpool, they're going to be able to pool together, look back at that fight, see where Fishgold had some deficiencies in that one, and help out Paddy Pimblett game planning in a fight against Gordon. Now, Gordon, to his credit, like you said, he's gotten even better since that fight that he had against Fishgold. And the only zig that I would zag to in his overall record, the split decision win that he has against Joe Selecki, that's a guy that wasn't on his way out and not one of those prospects.
But he's a prospect who not a lot of people think highly of Joe Selecki right now.
I think a lot of people think highly of Joe Selecki. Maybe I'm the only one.
Yeah,
but regardless,
I don't think Joe Selecki's
I think Jared Gordon, since his CFFC days, even though he was at the top of the mountain there, he's continued to get better. Even at 34 years of age, he's better than the fighter that came into the UFC, whereas Paddy Pimblett was the guy that kind of bucked the UFC away for a while, didn't want that shot, continued to get it done over with Cage Warriors. And for Gordon, obviously wants to take the back like Sorenbach was able to do and get a submission just like that. And that was Pimblett's last loss. But some challenges for Pimblett on the way up, some challenges even in the UFC. But we've seen an increase for Pimblett in his striking that we didn't necessarily see when he was with Cage Warriors. An uptick in the power, too, and the amount that he's kind of sat down on some of these shots.
It is nice to see because he's a very rangy guy for the weight division, and with his grappling in his back pocket, if he has an answer for you at the long range, that means you're going to have to get on the inside for Paddy Pimblett. You're falling into his trap at that point because then he can start using his wrestling. It is a nice thing to add to his game because some MMA fighters will add a wrinkle to their game, but it goes unnoticed. It's not really something or an area that they really go to, but when he did add these longer range strikes to his repertoire to where you really have to respect the distance striking of Pimblett, it then does open up the grappling of his own game, and that's why I think this is a difficult matchup for Jared Gordon, because I think Gordon's going to have to go for the takedown in this fight to have success. I think on the feet, he can make it a gritty fight. Maybe if he does get it on the inside, use a lot of clinch, maybe he can have success. But I gotta be honest, on the mat, I don't think Jared Gordon's that much better than Jordan Levitt. Like, Jordan Levitt's a really good grappler in this division. I know he might not be the most well-rounded fighter, he might not be your favorite fighter, but he's a really good wrestler and he's a great grappler. And Paddy Pimblett was able to cut through him like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, he might be your favorite torquer.
He might, but you know what I mean? Like, for Jared Gordon to have success, he's probably going to have to fight in a manner that we saw Jordan Levitt try to do. Levitt is really good at that one area of his game, and he offered little to no resistance to Paddy Pimblett. I just think Pimblett, with his grappling, he's much more finish-oriented than a guy like Jared Gordon.
To me, if I just focus on the sample size in the UFC and I look away from the Cage Warriors fights, because for Pimblett over with Cage Warriors after the Bach fight, the Decky Dalton fight was on somewhat a short notice. David Martinez wasn't on the same level, so I don't really classify those ones. And then the other ones, like Alexei Manikivi, go back and watch that one, the flying triangle win that he has. Like, he looks like Demetrius Johnson with his grappling in that one. But for Gordon, focus on Vendramini. I like Vendramini. I like that he's a powerful grappler. He's a powerful striker. Jared Gordon's a more complete product than that, and he's better than Vendramini in a lot of those positions. Look at Kazula Vargas. Kazula Vargas might have more power, but Jared Gordon is a much more complete fighter than that. And look at Jordan Levitt. Is Levitt maybe a more powerful grappler? Sure. Jared Gordon's better than Jordan Levitt. So for Gordon, this again is another really, really tough skill test, a tough skill check. And if you look at the odds, Pimblett open plus 125, minus 225 the favorite now. Gordon open minus 145, plus 182 or thereabouts on best fight odds. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Now, they're surprised us, they already do, but I don't assume they're all that close because Paddy Pimblett is that guy right now. I'm going to say over, under. I think I'm going to make it tough on you. 90% Pimblett.
Over.
I think it's going to be over. It's under. 869 total votes, 88% Pimblett, 15% by decision, 62% by submission, 16% by knockout. For the 12% that have Gordon, 82% by decision. The one X factor that I like out of Jared Gordon, doesn't matter if he's 34, if he's 28, he's got good cardio. He really does. You look at his last fight against my guy, Leo Santos. If you're new to the channel,
he's 43.
I've always been on Leonardo Santos. I think he was always just one of those sneaky guys that didn't fight enough. But for Jared Gordon, he just continued to apply the pressure, and he looked really, really good in that fight. He's got the stick-to-itiveness in his fights that if he gets hit by a big shot at Pimblett, he can kind of get the wherewithal to get back into a fight. But I think Pimblett, it's just the consistent, continued attacks and the variety of attacks that he's able to throw at a guy like Gordon. I like his grappling, his jiu-jitsu, and the fact that he started to kind of sit down on those shots as reasons why I think he can get the win over Gordon.
I think Gordon could win a decision, but that would be the only way. I don't think he can get a finish. He's an okay enough striker, but he's not the most heavy-handed. He's a good grappler, but he does really rely on his kind of cardio and his grit and grind and his wrestling more than his kind of lights out jiu-jitsu, if you will. So if it ends inside the distance, without a doubt, Paddy Pimblett, that's why I do like him in this fight. I do think he is the much more damaging fighter, whether it be with his grappling or with his striking, but it's another good step up for Paddy Pimblett. I will say this, the UFC is building him in a way that's going to make him better over time. You might want him to fight a guy who's in the top 15 right now, but I like how you broke it down. You said, oh, Jared Gordon, is he as good of a pure striker as Kazula Vargas? Maybe not, but he's definitely more well-rounded. Is he as good of a grappler as Jordan Levitt? No, but again, he's more well-rounded. He really is kind of a combination of all the UFC tests that Paddy Pimblett has had up until this point, and it's okay. You beat Jared Gordon. Is it Jim Miller next? Is it a guy who's maybe on his way out of the top 15? You don't know, but it's a good fighter is next. That's all you know. You can't go from Jared Gordon and then go back to fighting guys like Kazula Vargas. So I think this will be a really important step up for Paddy Pimblett. And this might be, it's wild to say, but the most important fight of his UFC career.
Winner gets the most called out fighter in UFC lightweight history who's not from Ireland. They get a guy out of New York. They call out Gregor Gillespie, the gift, Matt. Both of us in this fight going with the Paddy Pimblett to get the win. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have. A big-time main event for the title up at the top. Jan Blachowicz taking on Magomed Ankalaev. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Name Picks. We always say, let's get into it.